But on the inside, I had this really bad pain in my heart, in my chest. I couldn't sleep, rapid heartbeat. And I thought I was dying. And what I did was I kept it all to myself. And as I kept this struggle all to myself, I would go to the doctors, get all these heart tests and everything were checking out okay. And as I kept it to myself, it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. I started to withdraw. I didn't like to do the things I previously enjoyed. I would fake sick so I wouldn't have to go out. Here, I was battling significant anxiety and depression to the point where one time I was still keeping it hidden, and I was leading a meeting in 7th grade. And one of my panic attacks hit and it caused me to pass out. And as I started to come to, I heard, and I opened my eyes and I was just surrounded with people.
All right, everybody, here we are again. This is the Hot Conversations with School Leaders podcast. Remember, with Hot Conversations, we are trying to be as honest, open and transparent, just for individuals who are trying to become school leaders, individuals who are already school leaders. I think this is just a great opportunity for us to show what it is to lead schools in all the different capacities. At the same time, show that we are human beings, that we have real lives, we have real families, we have real triumphs, we have real struggles, and it's good. I think I spoke to somebody in the last interview. I just want to say that you can do it, right? Like, I know it can be hard, it can be difficult, but it is something that you can do, and you're having a lasting impact on so many lives. So I say this all the time. I'm excited about the interview. I'm actually trying to get this individual to come down. It's not on him, it's me, because he's waiting on me to get myself together. So I could get him down to speak to my leadership team. But I love what he is talking about and speaking to on just leading people. And I feel we've only spoken a couple of times, but definitely the genuineness of him wanting to actually help people and lead people in a manner that honestly honors God. We both believe in Jesus Christ. We both, he is our Savior. And so I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to be able to talk about how that impacts what we do. So this is Dr. Zac Bauermaster. He has written 2 books. One is Leading with a Humble Heart, and the other one is Leading with People. I think the width of that book is what definitely caught my eye. A lot of times we talk about leading people, but leading with people has been transformative for me because now I've grown as a leader, being more collaborative with the individuals that I am leading in my school. He's an elementary school principal. He's been an assistant principal. He's been an online administrator. He's been a teacher. He's been a coach. More importantly, he's a loving husband and a loving father. We were just talking about some of the great things his children were doing today. So without further ado, Dr. Bauermaster, take it away. How are you?
Great to be with you today. I appreciate that introduction. Appreciate all that you're doing. And just these open conversations are just so important for leaders to have. And we're all leaders. We all have influence in some form or the other. And we just need to continue to encourage each other, encourage one another. That's my life word, encourage. How can I encourage other people? And it's amazing. It's not why we do it, but when we encourage other people, it's amazing how ultimately we get encouraged by it. So I'm really excited to be here with you, talk leadership, school leadership, talk being a father, talk being a husband, because it's so much more than just leading in one role.
Yeah. And I love how you say that too. Just it's more than we're leading in so many different aspects. And sometimes I know for me that can become tough, right? Sometimes I want to just come home. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to lead. I don't want to lead the home. I don't want to lead kids. I don't want to make decisions on what dinner is going to be. Because I feel like I've been making decisions all day. And so we'll jump a lot into that as we move into the interview. Can you tell us a little bit about, well, not even just a little bit, go into your educational journey? Like, how did you get here leading schools and impacting lives?
Yeah, so I loved my schooling experience, always grew up playing sports as well. And I thought I was going to be a lifelong high school social studies teacher and high school basketball coach. And that's really where it was starting out. I taught 3 years. I'm really proud of my educational journey. I taught 3 years at the high school level. I taught 5 years at the middle school level. When I got into administration, it was 3 years as a high school assistant principal. And then at the same time, I was doing my doctorate work and superintendent letter of eligibility. So I was really intrigued. I had never seen the elementary level. So then I was an assistant principal at the elementary level for a year. And now I've been an elementary principal for almost 3 years. And I love to
Okay.
say, like, I've shaken hands on stage at graduation as you're sending seniors off. I love that. And now I'm welcoming kindergarten families for their first experience with school. So it's just been really neat to see it K to 12. And I say this all the time. I've been at all levels, but no matter high school, middle school, or elementary, what we do in education is all about people. It's a people business. And when I was making that transition from secondary level to elementary, I had a few people tell me, you don't want to do that. It's completely different. But then I also had some people tell me, leadership is leadership. And I'm a firm believer in that. Leadership is leadership. So I'm really, like I said, I'm really proud of just the experiences I've had, being able to connect with families and kids across all levels.
So, and I have another friend of mine, we had done an interview, and he's done the same. He's done elementary, middle, and high. In your estimation, like, what's the difference? Because I've only done middle. I've done a little bit of high school work. It's interesting, too. You were a social studies teacher. I was a social studies teacher. You coach basketball at the high school level. I coach basketball at the middle school level. So that's really cool. What's the difference in your mind of the three levels?
It's a great question. I think with elementary school, I mean, all the leadership role, principal role requires a lot of patience. But in elementary school, you're really getting that first experience with kids. You're really learning kids, and you're starting to like find what do they need, and you're setting that stage up so you have them in the right spot. Whether they need speech support, whether they need reading support, do they need an IEP? What accommodations do they qualify for, gifted or extensions? You're just really getting to know kids and families and setting them up at that spot in middle school. We know I love middle school too. I know they say middle school is not for everyone. I love middle school. I have a daughter right now that's in 7th grade. But then high school is that spot. Well, middle school, you want to continue to help them find their passions. And I'm a big believer in that. Like, help people find their passions, their gifts, their talents and abilities, and put them in a position to live it out. I love our school's mission statement is connecting, inspiring, empowering. It's just 3 words. So our goal at all levels is to connect with kids, connect with families, get to know them, inspire them to what they can become, and empower them, put them in the right spots to do it. And then in the high school level, the experiences just even grow even more. There's so much more with trades. There's so much more with internships. High school's really changing with, like, some kids are hardly in school when they're in high school because there's so many opportunities. There's athletics, there's music. There's just so many opportunities for them that really pave the way right as they're about to graduate and head out. And it's all real world. I don't want to say head into the real world because it's all part of the real world as they grow.
Yeah. So what, in your mind as an elementary school principal, like, what is the most important thing for you to do every day with your students? And then we'll take it from the students to your staff.
Yeah. It's the connection piece. And I'm a big believer, and I say this all the time. I want to create a school culture where kids want to come. So first, kids want to come to school. And with that, it's a place that staff wants to be. So my job as a principal, and I know you said we'll get there, my job as a principal is to put staff at a right spot where they're healthy and they can give their best to kids, but then also a place that families trust and are proud to send their kids. So if I summarize that again, a place that kids want to go, a place that staff want to be, and a place that families trust and are proud to send their kids. Because too often we hear at a young age these days of kids not even wanting to go to school. And how can we create that environment where they feel connected, they feel like they are seen? And so we even, like, I'm big on fist bumps, just kids being known, like giving fist bumps all the time. We call Fridays Fist Bump Friday, where we celebrate coming together. Like, if you look at the hand, it looks like it's individuals, and we talk about a fist bump is coming together and we're stronger together.
I like
So
that.
we really,
I like that.
yeah. So we really celebrate the fist bump, but that's first and foremost, having kids want to come to school, creating a fun environment. But we're not going to create that as leaders if we're not doing it for the staff, because because we got to pour into the staff. Sometimes you often hear principals talk about when they make decisions, is it in the best interest of the kids? But as principals and school leaders, when we make decisions, what's in the best interest of the kids is taking care of the staff. And it's not just saying it. It's not just talking about self-care. It's not just talking about staff. I want you to take a break this weekend. But are we putting them in a spot where they can actually do that? Are we taking some things off of their plate? I try to encourage them to just take care of their families. I'm a big believer in it. Like as a leader, if I'm not pouring and taking care of my family, I have no business leading anyone else. So we just really want to have healthy teachers, healthy support staff, just every single role.
So in your estimation, what's your definition of healthy? So kind of being transparent with myself, when I first got into it, I thought I was healthy in that as long as I could get up every day and go to work and work hard, I thought I was healthy, right? And that was just a younger, more naive version of me. What I found was, as I was so focused on moving up the ladder to become an assistant principal, then a principal, my marriage wasn't healthy, right? And it is so much healthier now, and I thank God for that. My parenting wasn't healthy, but a lot of it was just the perspective on my priorities were just totally out of whack. And as I got those straight, it's almost like I immediately became healthier. So what does health look like to you?
Yeah. And I've battled the same struggles, and I'm so grateful, like through God's grace, my wife, Carly, and the real conversation she has with me, where at times, like I think things are going well, and all of a sudden we hit a Saturday, and I can tell things are off, and she'll be like, Zach, we're falling apart. We're falling apart. And she'll say, you're not prioritizing our family. Things like, I'm honestly giving you some real quotes. Like, you don't practice what you preach. You're giving your best to everyone else, but not inside this home. And I have found when I'm leading well inside my home, I'm able to lead well outside. And when I'm not leading well inside the home, I'm not leading well outside. So healthy, and I talk about this a lot. We often talk about work-life balance, but I refer to it as work-life rhythm, a work-life rhythm. There's going to be seasons that are busier, like the start of a school year, the end of a school year. And I'll be honest, any time of the school year, you actually find it seems to be a busy season. But like with your kids and your family, you find a rhythm that works for you. And it's so important to talk to your spouse and have those conversations about those different seasons of a year, because I think that's part of being healthy, because more than ever, home comes to work and work comes home. And it's just a blurred line all the time. And we never truly do have that balance, but we need to find that rhythm that works for us and our families. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, just healthy. It's first and foremost, and every person's situation is different, but it's taking care of your spouse. It's taking care of your kids. And then it's creating that space for the staff to do the same thing. One of the biggest compliments I ever got was from a husband of one of the teachers, one of the second grade teachers where I'm principal. And they said, like, my wife is back. My wife is back. Just this past 2 weeks ago, I had a teacher pull me aside in the hall. He said, hey, I want to let you know, you helped bring me out of a burnout period. He said, I was done. And I got chills, and I told my wife, because sometimes I need encouragement too, just being honest.
Yes.
Yes. And when he pulled me aside and he said that, I told my wife, I said, and I needed to hear that. Like, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So staff and adults, that they can feel like, hey, I'm not burning out. And we want to burn bright. We want to burn bright in education. We want to be that light, of course, that light of Jesus, but we want to be that light for people in a dark world, especially when people are burning out, always looking around, pushing harder, got to work late, got to get to work early. Something early on in my education, I thought working hard meant working all the time. I thought I had to send emails at all hours, and it made me look good if I was sending an email at 4 a.m. and 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon. And I was like, no, that's dumb, Zach. That's dumb. So So I like in the evenings on weekends, I call it email crickets. I don't want to see any emails being sent around. I don't want anyone to think that they're pulled to work. I want them like, hey, they may have to work at home. That's fine. Everyone has that different rhythm, but I don't want them to feel pulled by an email I sent or one that a colleague sends. But that's just something I'm passionate about. How can we operate at our best?
It's so cool to hear you be at that point, because that's a point where I'm at now too, where like, again, once bell rings and people go home, I'm not sending you any emails. I'd appreciate if you don't send me any emails, not because I don't want to hear from you. This is the time for you to go home, take care of yourself, take care of your family. On the weekends, do the same. Something that you brought up though is, so how do you take that when your wife is saying that to you? Because my wife does the exact same thing to me. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't take it well at the beginning, because it was like, man, I am working my butt off here. Like, I am working to try to make it ends meet for the family. I'm like, I know I love my family. I wouldn't be working so hard if I loved my family. And it took a while, but I'm very thankful for that feedback. And I understand now what love looks like to my family. So, like, how did you wrestle with that?
Yeah. And it was almost a rhythm I was going through where my wife would have one of those hard conversations with me. Yeah, I know I need to do better. And then I would fall into that pattern again. And there was one weekend I got home on a Friday and I probably missed being home for dinner 6 out of the last 8 nights. And I was looking forward to the weekend so I could get some rest, but also get caught up on work. And when I got home on a Friday, my wife said, I don't want to see your laptop out this weekend. And then what does she find the next day? I'm trying to sneak my laptop out. And she points around. I could tell I was in trouble. And I don't know if you've ever been in this. You know you're in trouble,
Yes.
and you just follow her around until she makes you feel better.
Yep.
Like, but she pointed to pile of laundry, toys on the floor, and she said, Zach, look around. She said, you're always talking about you have to finish one more thing. You have to get one more thing done. And she said, you know what would happen if I always focused on just finishing one more thing? She said the relationships would suffer. The relationships with the kids and the relationship, you and I, our relationship is going to suffer. And that's the conversation that I think hit me the hardest. Like, wow. And I realized how I often let to-do lists, getting things done, get in the way of relationships in my home. So that one hit me. And that was a really, God used that as a turning point for my life. And then even thinking at work, where how I can get into a to-do list mode and miss what's most important, the people. You're so worried about getting things done that we forget to slow down. So that's a conversation. So like I said, I went through a few beatings with it, and well deserved. But then, that conversation was really a turning point where she really challenged me, saying I was making the family a byproduct of my work. And that's and a byproduct is a secondary unintended result, and a priority is what we find most important. So I think it's really valuable. And I want to challenge listeners to create a list of your priorities. But then the second part, and this is the convicting part, do your actions and your time align with your priorities? And that's the part that hits me. I can write down number 1, Jesus. I can write down number 2, following God. 3, my wife. 4, my kids. I can write that down. But then that second part is the way I'm living aligning with what I'm saying are my priorities. And that's really it's really a convicting exercise that I need to do every so often.
My dad, he would always say, my dad's a pastor. He would always say, you spell love Time, right? Like, he would just always say that.
That's so
And
good.
if you looked at I would tell you in a heartbeat, I love my wife, I love my kids. If you looked at my time would tell you, I love my school, or I love the work.
Yeah.
It would not, if you just looked at my time, it would not be that I loved my wife and my kids. Question I have for you, because sometimes I think about this, like, why do you feel like, and I can't say this is all principles, but why do you feel like we're like that? Like, I know me personally, I can get locked in and I just want to be great. I want to win. I want to make sure the school is everything. And I feel like I've been like that with everything my whole life. Like once I'm locked in, and everything else is a bother. Why do you think we're like that?
Yeah. I think for me, and I'm just going to humbly say pride. I can let pride get in the way. And whether I intend it to be pride, because being a husband, being a father, it can be some hard in the trenches. You're not getting much praise type work. But when I'm a words of affirmation guy, like as I reflect on myself, and I just love when things are, I'm just like you, they're competitive, wanting to do well, really having anything. And I feel like it's a blessing in a way, but also a struggle for me. Anything I touch, I want it to be the best. I just want it to be the best. I have so much pride in it. Um, but then for me, as I said, that words of affirmation, and I think sometimes it can be, it's not always the glitz and glamour as you're raising young kids and you're working through having difficult conversations. So I think as I think about that question, that's what comes to mind, where I know every morning I need to empty myself of my pride to really lead with humility. And then just recognizing everything I say about leadership for teachers and kids and families, I need to be doing inside my home. And it's really convicting when I realize, hey, Zac, you said all those things, you did all those things today, but then you came home and you responded to your wife like this, or you came home and you reacted like out of impatience to your kids. So it's not easy, and that's why we need to encourage each other. But that's something that comes to mind for me.
So as we look, we can say maybe we're more seasoned veterans now in this marriage, parenting, school leadership life. What are some strategies you would give to a younger you, right? Or some things you would just say like, hey, as you're getting into this thing, you could push a time machine button, go back, say, hey, buddy, look, I know you're excited about this. Here are some things that won't make things perfect, but will make things better. What would that be?
Yeah. One thing I had mentioned already, that how when I was young, I thought working hard was working all the time. You don't need to work all the time. Number two, I would encourage people to find their leadership voice, not someone else's.
Oh,
When
okay.
I think we want to learn from as many people as we can, but we want to ultimately lead with our leadership voice. I think early on, I tried to mimic too many people. You see something, you read a book or you hear a podcast, and right away you try to imitate that. Or maybe there's a principal or leader you've been around, but really trying to find your own leadership voice. And I think that being that authentic self, many people, many leaders, me included, battle imposter syndrome. And it's like, you may, sometimes you feel like you're a fraud, or that like somehow maybe you'll be exposed. You're not as sharp as you think, or maybe you're an assistant principal and then you're about to be principal and you get this feeling, what if I can't do it? Like, what if I can't do it? So I just really encourage people to step out of that doubt. So step out of those doubts that you have, and step into your calling, step out of your doubts and into your calling.
So, oh no, keep going. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it.
No, so I really wish I hadn't stopped you because I think the stuff that you're giving is really the value of the podcast, right? Like as I look back and being a father and being a husband, everything you said would be something that's for me. Like I did think the same way. Like you just got to work. Like that's what you're supposed to do. And for me too, it was you're supposed to work. And maybe this is a man saying. I'm not going to necessarily say it's just a man thing, but you're not to show that you are fearful of anything, or that you are that you can't do it, or that you have some type of weakness, right? I'm supposed to lead my family. They're supposed to lean on me. And I will tell you, probably it was my fourth and fifth year. Like I went through some really dark times where I had to get some therapy. I had to I would have like anxiety. I remember sitting at home and I was supposed to be taking a day off, and something happened at school, and I think it was during the COVID year. Just different things have been happening. I remember I could not get out of my head. Like it was going over and over and over. And I'm glad to be where I'm at now. And I wouldn't want to go back to that. I'm happy I went through it because I am a much better person for it. It is something that needed to happen. Um, but I just appreciate your encouragement, the things that you said. Like, have you ever gone through a season or a time where it was like almost like life makes you have to say, all right, you better change or
Yeah.
this ain't gonna last too long?
Yeah. Well, Matthew, I appreciate you sharing that. And it's a huge part of my story. It's what led me to start writing. But in 2015, on the outside, everything was all together. I was married to my high school sweetheart. We had two beautiful daughters at the time. I was a seventh grade teacher. I was the team leader, coaching basketball, continuing my education. But on the inside, I had this really bad pain in my heart, in my chest. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. Rapid heartbeat. Uh, and I, I thought I was dying. I thought I was dying. And what I did was I kept it all to myself. And as I kept this struggle all to myself, I would go to the doctors, get all these heart tests and everything were checking out okay. And as I kept it to myself, it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. I started to withdraw. I didn't like to do the things I previously enjoyed. I would fake sick so I wouldn't have to go out. Here, I was battling significant anxiety and depression to the point where one time I was still keeping it hidden. And I was leading a meeting in seventh grade and one of my panic attacks hit and it caused me to pass out. And as I started to come to, I heard and I opened my eyes and I was just surrounded with people. And that's sort of really the jumping point to my book, Leading with People, where I opened my eyes. And this was a moment I did not want at all. I feared passing out. I lived in this season of anxiety, worry, fear. And it's not just like anxiety, like you're worried. I physically felt out of my body and out of my head. And it was just an awful experience. I went and got counseling as well. But I'm so thankful for that time where God really used it to soften and shape my heart and grow me, and realized when I just started talking to people about my struggles, I instantly felt some relief. I remember a guy at church sharing his testimony, a guy I had known my whole life, about when he was around 30. And it was the same things that he had gone through, I was experiencing. And I thought I was the only one. And so I really want to encourage leaders to be vulnerable, share your stories, because people, you might hear this, people admire your strengths, but they connect with your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. And that time was a time God has really used in my life to really develop that empathy and compassion lens. Because I was like, wow, people can feel like this. And so I encourage anyone, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression, one of the best things you can do to start is reach out and let some other people know. But it was a time that God used in my life. You know, when you go through anxiety and struggles, people can turn to a lot of different things, whether it be alcohol, drugs, hobbies. Through God's grace, he directed me. And I was raised a Christian, wonderful family. There hasn't been a day I haven't known Jesus, but I dove into his word. I dove into prayer, meditating on his word and journaling. That's when I really started to write. When you think about the Psalms and David just pouring out his heart. But, you know, I'm so encouraged. Here I sit 10 years later and I can share these stories. And I'm so excited. Like you said, I wouldn't change. It was a terrible time, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back and change it. If I went back, my pastor says this all the time, and I think it's a quote from Boyce, but if we would change things, we would only make them worse. So I'm just really thankful for that part of my story. And just, I know what a struggle anxiety and depression is for people. And I just want to encourage them to reach out. And maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else. But there's a lot of people to walk beside us, and you can't go wrong lifting your eyes and turning to the Lord.
So that's a great segue. So what is the impact of faith in your work? Like I'm the same as you. I don't know a life without Jesus. With my parents being pastors, I know I feel like I've always been in the Bible, love the Word of God, study it, all the different things. I like knowing the truth behind things. So like, I want to know the Hebrew word. I want to know the Greek word. I want to know what this really means. I didn't really become saved, I don't think, until right before college. Like, I knew all the stuff and I believed I was, but I can't say I got radical, or maybe that's not the word, but just like, this is my choice. not this is my
Yeah.
family, this is
Yeah.
mine until then. Like, and because of that, it feels like I always have an anchor or something I'm grounded to. Like life can get really crazy. No, I can always come back to the word. I think I'm at a place on my relationship with God. I'm at a place now where I'm starting to go there first instead of waiting for things to go crazy
Yes.
and then come back. Now it's
Yeah.
just stay there. Just stay there.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So what's that impact on your life?
Yeah, it's huge. And we just, as the word says, we don't just want to be hearers of the word. We want to be doers. We want to live it out. And I mean, even before we touch our phone or check an email, we need to be in the word of God. Just that silence and solitude, be in the word of God, meditate on it, meditate on it. And, you talked about your struggle with anxiety. I talked about mine. No one talks to ourselves more than we talk to ourselves. So what are we feeding ourselves? And we need to feed ourselves the truth. There's so many lies out there in the world that want to sneak in. And so there's no better way to start our day with our first fruits of time. And I love Jesus's model, how he would wake up early while it was still dark and go spend time with his heavenly Father, and how Jesus would step away. Crowds were following him. He was healing. He was preaching, but he would step away and go to the mountainside and pray. So we just as leaders modeling that, getting up really early. A guy from church, I heard him share, no matter what season of life you're going in, if you're finding it difficult to get to spend time with the Lord, wake up earlier. Like just wake up earlier. And you can't go wrong with waking up earlier and spending that quiet time. I should probably get more sleep. My wife will tell you that. She'll come out some mornings and she'll say, "Do you ever sleep?" But I love waking up in the quiet, dark morning. And the earlier I wake up, the longer I have in that time of day. And so just, as I said, being in the word, that allowing that time to meditate on the word, and meditate isn't what the world will tell you of emptying the mind. It's filling the mind with the word, and then really turning that over to prayer, because it's all about our heart. Everything we do overflows from our heart. So what are we, the words that we speak overflow from our heart. Our actions overflow from our heart. And I often think when I respond with impatience, and you might hear the response, "Oh, that's not me. That's not the person I am." And I think our heart actually reveals who we are. No, you know what? That is actually me. I need to go take a look. I need to go take a look at my heart. So we got it. Like I said, before we touch our phone, we need to be in the word. We need to be in silent meditation and prayer, and get a good workout in and exercise. Like we need to do those things. And that faith, it just puts everything in perspective, that to live and lead with an eternal lens. Everything God's bringing our way each day is to shape our hearts for eternity. And that's me. That's why even when challenges come, it's like, all right, Lord, how are you using this? How can I be a tool to point other people to you? As I was saying, just like, how can we can't save people, but God uses us as a tool. God uses us as a tool to point, constantly be pointing. And I want to point people towards him. I want to point people towards Jesus, and not away from him by the way I leave and interact. And that's why I think so much, especially the word compassion. Empathy is one thing where you empathize the feelings of another, but compassion, you think of the story of the Good Samaritan, but it's moving into action. You saw the priest and Levite who walked to the other side of the person in need, but you saw the Good Samaritan go across the street to the person in need. And that's what we need to do as leaders. We need to go to the need, which you often see things like compassion fatigue, and it can be difficult, but that's why we need to continue to fill ourselves with that vertical relationship with the Heavenly Father, so we can spread it horizontally to the people we lead.
So great segue too into your books. So when I first heard of you, and was seeing your stuff that you were posting on social media, and I looked at your books, my first impression, because sometimes we just get into this mode of, in order to be a good leader, I need other strategies, right? I just need one more strategy. I just need one more thing. And when I was looking at your books and reading through your books, like at first, and again, honest, open, and transparent, I was like, man, like, I'm reading something where it's, and maybe that's it. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm reading something that's dealing with my heart, and I don't want to deal with my heart. I want to just give me the next thing, whether that's a PLC or whether that's this thing right here. And I want to say thank you, because what I'm seeing is, yeah, like that is how you're going to grow as a leader. And really the only way to lead is if you deal with you. And if you, what is it? The first rule of government is self-government, right? So if you can't lead yourself, then you can't lead a family, which means you can't lead a city, which means you can't lead a community. You can't do any of those things. So talk a little bit about your books, Leading with a Humble Heart and then Leading with People. Like, what were you trying to get across
Yeah.
to people?
Matthew, you nailed it already, though. The heart work. And people say the heart work is the hard work. And we always want chat GPT and AI and listen to a podcast or a blog that has, hey, these 5 leadership tips and tricks and strategies. There's some good stuff. But if our heart isn't in the right place, those tips and strategies won't mean anything. So Humble Heart was my first book. And I actually started, as I talked about, during my season of anxiety and depression, I just started to write. And I loved leadership books. I love leadership podcasts. But as I listened to them, I was like, this is all the Bible. Like, this all comes back to the Bible. So many great stories in the Bible of people who walked with the Lord, leaders who walked with the Lord, and people who went astray from the Lord. And so that one's set up as a 40-day devotional, because how we often see that number 40 days or 40 years in the Bible is often a season of trial, tribulation. And it's just a season where God uses those 40-day seasons to grow. I think I'm back again. But God uses those 40-day seasons. Like, sometimes things happen in seasons. So it's to encourage people day by day to be in prayer, to read the Bible, and to journal. I really want to encourage people to journal. That's one that not many people do, but journaling slows you down. And I think we need to take the time to journal more, because we can really just express. It's almost like a brain dump of a to-do list, but you can just pour out your heart. And again, I think of the Psalms. I think of David pouring out his heart. And then Leading with People, it really talks about, it begins with that story of me passing out. And it talks about leading with a people framework. And that's, we want to prioritize people. We want to empathize. We want to observe their needs and respond with compassion. We want to pray for and with people. We want to love people, and we want to encourage people. And through that book, I offer actionable strategies and ways to do that, but all with the biblical foundation. But part of what I talk about first, though, is laying our leadership foundation, because we can't build those pillars if we don't lay our foundation. And our foundation is where, again, I talk about being in the Word and being in prayer. And that's why a book like Humble Heart could go along with Leading with People as well, because it's part of building our leadership foundation. So it really was, as you mentioned, you had a great segue to this. It's about the heart, and it's about helping leaders reflect on their heart. And again, it's not me changing their heart, but it's pointing to the one who can.
So how do you encourage leaders who may not believe in Jesus, right? Like, sometimes as we do this work, we know what we believe, and we're not trying to push what we believe on people. But I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it is hard to come to work and you feel like you have, again, even as you all as the listeners listen to this, hopefully I do not offend, but sometimes you feel like you have the answer, right? Like, I know that I believe in Jesus. I know that I feel like what he has done for me in my life, and you want to share that with others. But like you said, you don't want to offend, because it's like, look, I mean, you have great people who are not believers in Jesus and who are doing incredible work for people, who are great individuals. Like, how do you, I don't even say balance, how do you walk this life out for Christ in your role as a principal in places where you feel like people may not want to hear that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like, it comes down to living biblically, just walking humbly, sometimes just keeping our mouth closed, listening to people, helping, and just, so I'll present to schools. And sometimes when I present to schools, many will know I have a faith base, but they'll ask, hey, we love your stuff, but could you not include any of the scripture and faith base? But you still have the positivity, you still have the encouragement, and still creating that school culture. But then I'll go to other schools and they'll be like, hey, we want you to put scripture in there. We want you to share all those things. So the reason I bring that up now, because that reminds me of your question, where it's not, I'm not always walking around sharing Bible verses or speaking Jesus' name in every conversation, but hopefully what I'm doing is just quietly and humbly living it out where people can see that just by the way maybe I live and lead or respond to a difficult situation. And so I think that's really that part then of being a doer of the word. And yeah, so I think that's really what it comes down to. Just and I keep coming back to that, and I think of the book, leading with a humble heart, just leading with humility, and and people will respond well to humility when they know you have their best interest in mind, and you are there to serve, and you're there to serve, support, and encourage. So I don't know if I answered that too well, but I think that's something that comes to mind as I
No,
think.
I think you answered it very well. Uh, What are you most passionate about as a leader, right? Because you're working with people, you're leading with people, and at the end of the day, though, too, you got to have results, right? Like kids need to learn, kids need to be learning at high levels. We need to be trying to get every last one of them. Like sometimes I think of, I don't know how much you know Pokemon, but sometimes it's like on the song, it's like got to catch them all. And in my mind, I'm always thinking about kids like, we got to get them all. Like not one of these in my building, 618 kids can get away. Like we got to grab
Yeah,
them. So
yeah,
like, what are strategies you use as a leader to make sure kids are learning at high levels and that we're
yeah.
catching them all?
Yeah, I remember so I have three kids, and my oldest is almost 13. And I remember I was an assistant principal, but I remember when we put her on the bus for kindergarten. And as my wife and I walked her there, we didn't know what she was going to do. And she marched right up those big steps. And then you could barely see her looking out the bus window waving. And it just hit me. My wife and I, we cried the whole way back. But what an opportunity we have in schools. And you got me fired up thinking about it. We had her for those 5 years. Now we're sending her off to a school and where we're not going to see her all day, but we're trusting our daughter, our baby to the school. And we want them to do whatever they can to meet her needs academically, emotionally, socially. Like we just want them to take care. And I think about that as a principal, like parents. I always say this, parents send us their best every day. And it's not always parents either. I should change my word. Families, whoever it may be, there's difficult situations. Families send us their best every day, but everyone's best looks different. We need to meet them where they are. And that's why it is so important. Like we have something called data days where we sit through we have three interventionists and we have I think I'm back again. We have three interventionists. We have the grade level teachers there. We have the school counselor. We have the principal. And we go through and we talk about every kid by name. We take a look at their data and then we take a look at their tier groups. And so that's like from an academic piece where we go through and are we meeting them where they are? What else do they need in reading? What else do they need in math? What can we do behaviorally? Can we put a positive behavior support plan in? And so we just look at every single kid by name, and that's a good thing to do, is know every single kid by name. And we don't want to miss, you're exactly right. We don't want to miss anybody. And as a leader, sometimes you think it's on you, but one of your main roles as a leader is to put the right people in the right room at the right time. And sometimes I feel like when I'm in a meeting, I feel like I'm honestly the least important person there because everyone there that knows a child so well, it's just getting them there. And then how can we connect them? Because we do certainly want to continue to grow in reading and math. We want them to grow socially and be able to maximize their gifts.
How do you, again, we could dive so much and I like that, like bringing the right people in the room. How do you work with individuals who may not see that vision like you do, right? Like they may be very difficult people to work with. It may be individuals who look, I just don't see it that way and I don't want to do it that way. Like, how do you work with them?
So sometimes, and this is an area I still need to grow, sometimes it is having those hard conversations.
Mhm.
And I always think about confronting problems and not people. And I think I can think of it right now, and I forget who says it, if it's Jimmy Casas, but you want culture moving a certain direction, and think of it as waves, but then you'll have those undercurrents that are pushing against it. And you have to have that emotional intelligence, being able to look around, be like, what's really hurting the culture? And sometimes it is just those interactions. Sometimes it's having those conversations, having those difficult conversations if something's not really aligning with the vision and culture of the school. And I think so something, as I answer that, I think of it just having hard, real conversations. And sometimes that might cause someone to resign or someone leave, but you want to get the right people there. You want to have the right people in the right spots, who are ready. And I don't want it to say it's my vision or my mission, but what we have going as a school.
Yeah, gotcha. What and I think we're getting close to the end. Even though I kind of don't want to, because I feel like there's so much more. If you haven't read Dr. Bauermaster's books, I would encourage you to do so, because I think it's just going to be, like we talked about, just a great heart check for yourself. Um, we can learn all of the instructional stuff. We can learn all of the PBIS and the PLC. In all honesty, we can learn all those things. If you can get to a point where you can address certain things in yourself, you can be honest with yourself. If you can get the things in the right priority, that doesn't mean you're always going to do it and be great at it. But if you can prioritize the relationships in your life, your faith, if that is what you have, your belief system, it's just going to make being a leader not necessarily easier, but to me, in some ways, it's going to make it more fulfilling. I feel like you're going to get more things done because you're just being kind of true to who you are. So, Dr. Bauermaster, what are a couple of things? You did some earlier, but for people who are walking into this profession, what are things that you feel like are like must-haves? I know we talked about what would you say to yourself earlier, but what would you say now to individuals?
Yeah, I think about what really matters. Like, what really matters at the end of the day? What really matters? What does it come down to? Um, and it's people, and it's people. I'll just say that word over again. The work we do in education is all about people. It's a people business. And as a school leader, your job is to grow people and to help them reach like heights that they didn't even think that they could reach. And we can't lose sight of that when you start a day. So that's walking around a school. That's popping into class. Like every day I try to make sure, like, these 5 things: you're greeting kids as they come in. You walk around, and maybe, I don't know the size of your school, but you walk around and you say good morning to every classroom. If you have to split it up with assistant principals where you're popping in, they see you. You're visible in the hallways. You're in the cafeteria connecting, and then you're sending kids off. You're at the door as they leave for the day. Just like 5 simple things where people know that they're connected, they're valued, you're visible. I think a lot of principals will end up in their office because they know when they go out into the hallways, things come their way. But we need to go meet those things head on and get out in front of them instead of it coming towards us. So you see a lot of mobile desks now. Sometimes I take my laptop and just sit in the hallway. Sometimes I stand, but you're just out there. And then sometimes I'm sitting in the hall and a class walks by. You just fist bump everyone that walks by.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know. Those days, I always say this too, those days you feel like hiding are the days that someone needs you the most. And I'll be honest, there's days I wake up and I don't feel like going in public. But I know, the Lord has a call in my life, and those days are usually when an amazing conversation happens that I wasn't expecting. And I just think, and I can't say it enough, the work we do is all about people, loving kids, loving the adults in the building, making sure they're taking care of their families, taking care of your own family, taking care of your own kids, and just being at your best. And as we've talked about, for me, it's really being in alignment with the Heavenly Father, and then being able to spread that horizontally to anyone I come in contact with. And that's really my message of just take it day by day, one day at a time. We can get caught worrying about the future, or we can get caught regretting the past, and we miss right now. So just taking it day by day, and just really be a light, be hope and encouragement for other people. It's not easy work. It's not easy work, but it's certainly worth it.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree. I when you said that the day that you don't want to be out is you tend to have like an incredible conversation. I feel like that any day that I've gotten up and I'm like, hey, you know what? I think this is it. I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm kind of beat up. It never fails, whether that's a staff member or a child. Somebody will come up to me and be like, hey, Mr. Mason, I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Or,
Yeah.
hey, thank you for doing such and such.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
almost like, and I always, in this, it's funny because I feel like my relationship with God is funny sometimes. I kind of look up a little bit and like, all right, I got it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here we
I'm
go.
not done yet. Yep. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll keep going.
Well,
So,
yeah. One time I was at school as a principal and I texted my wife and I said, I don't think I can do it anymore. And like I was done. And she sent me a text, and I'll try to get it right. She said, God didn't call you to be a principal because you're equipped, but he will equip you to be a principal. And I love that when God stretches me beyond what I could do, and I can't do anything on my own. One of my favorite verses is John 15:5, where Jesus says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, you can bear much fruit, but apart from me, you can do nothing. And that is just, when I sign books, that's the verse I put underneath it, because we need to stay connected to the vine. We're just a branch, but we can bear fruit, and we bear fruit in education, and with fruit comes seeds, and then with seeds grows more fruit, and it's just an awesome profession to be in.
I was at our church. We had an event last night, and one of the things the man actually said, he was actually speaking to me. He was like, "That's not your career. That's your assignment." He was like, "So you need to, and it helped me because it's like just like not trying to compare what we do to what soldiers do in deployment, but at the same time, it's like, but this is where I have you at right now. So you don't need to look at this as like this is what I'm going to do forever. You do need to look at it as this is where I've assigned you at. So since I've
Yeah.
now assigned you to that, then like you just said, I'll equip you. And I think I've learned that too. God will equip you for whatever he's
Yeah.
assigned you to do. So
Yeah.
that's a really good word from your wife. I like that.
Yeah. I love too what you just said there about, you talked about like, hey, this is where God has you right now. I love this. I just love the story when David became king of Israel, where when Samuel went to Jesse's home to find the next king, all the big brothers lined up. So all the brothers lined up, and Samuel said, is this all are these all the sons you have? And then they said, no, there's one more, the youngest, David, but he's in the shepherd's field tending to the sheep. So when he was called to be king, he was doing what God had called him, just day by day, feeding the sheep. He was feeding the sheep, and then God came, plucked him to be the king. And that's just what you were saying, just that perfect example of doing what God has called you to do in the moment. Because I always get caught looking ahead, what's next, what's next, and I try to tell myself, hey, day by day, just feed the sheep right here where God has called me, and trust. He's always going to provide.
I love that. I love that. We'll wrap up. I got 3 quick questions for you. So we're gonna they're kind of rapid fire. So we'll see what you get. So you have written 2 books. I believe most of us who are between you and I, we would say the Bible is the most important book for us. What is another book for you that has been the most influential for you, period? So that could be in education, that could be in marriage, parenting. What is like that one book for you?
Yeah. I really like the book Broken Down House by Paul Tripp.
Okay.
Broken Down House. And I love the example he sets at the beginning of the book, where if you watch HGTV, sometimes you look at a house and it looks like it's just broken down. But some people look at that broken down house and they see it differently, what it could be. And that's really the start of that. And Tripp does a nice job of saying how we're broken down houses here on earth, but God sees perfection and what he's done in our life. So I really like that one. And then I really like a book by Peter Greer called Lead with Prayer. Lead with Prayer. Peter Greer, just really, really dives in to a prayer life. So I think those are two that come to mind. Another one is Deep Work by Cal Newport. Deep Work, and it just talking about how we live in a distracted world, doing so many surface level things, and we're missing the mark on some of the deep work and working to our full abilities.
Love it. Next question is, if you had 5 dinner guests, dead or alive, so dead or alive, who would you have at your dinner table?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to write these out as we're talking.
Oh yeah, good.
All right. I'll have quite a combination here. We'll go with Jesus.
Okay.
Abe Lincoln. Would love to talk to Abe Lincoln. I would love to sit down with Kobe Bryant.
Ooh, okay.
Kobe Bryant, just the Mamba mentality.
Yeah.
My grandfather, Claire Wade. I did
Okay.
get to know great grandfather Claire Wade, but I would just love to sit down with him as well. Well, there's 4. I guess I would be the 5th. I'm trying to
Well,
think about.
no. So this is outside of you. So you got one more.
Okay, all right. So Claire, Kobe, Jesus, Abe Lincoln. I'm going to go with. I'm going to bring my other side of the family, my grandpa Bauermaster.
Okay.
There's just something so encouraging about my grandmother. She's still living, and every time I see her, she tells me how proud of me she is. But she also tells me, I know you got 2 grandfathers up in heaven really smiling down too. And so that just really, it's always an encouragement to me as she tells me to keep writing. But then it really causes me to think about my grandfather.
So I told somebody in another interview, it's interesting as educators, when we do this, there is always going to be one or multiple family members at our table. Like regardless, they're going to be there. I would love to hear a conversation between Jesus, Abraham Lincoln, and Kobe Bryant. Like that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Last question is, who would you like to see on the podcast? But the caveat is, it's got to be somebody that you could help us.
Okay. But how about Jimmy Casas?
Okay. You're the second person who said that. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
So, yeah. So he would be a good one. Who else mentioned him?
It was Alshon and Jonathan.
Oh, did you have him on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I had him on as well.
No, I was good. He would be he's a great guest as well.
Yeah. So it's funny because I had him on. Yep. So I've got both of y'all on now. So that's going to be good.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Well, look, man, I appreciate you. I think this has been awesome. Again, you dropped a lot of gems. I love your transparency. Again, this is honest, open, and transparent conversations with school leaders. Appreciate you being here. Please take what you learned today. Hopefully it encourages your heart, helps you meditate on what you want life to look like, and start moving in that direction for yourself if you aren't already doing that. So we love you. Keep leading, and we will see you at the next episode.